There is a number you have probably never told anyone, not your salary, not your credit score, the number that lives in a spreadsheet you open at midnight or a banking app you check before you even get out of bed. It is the number that tells you how far you still have to go. And the strange thing is, the people who have finally crossed the finish line on a major financial goal almost universally say the same unexpected thing. It did not feel the way they thought it would. This video is about those finish lines, what it actually takes to reach them, what the research says about who gets there and who does not, and what changes, quietly, permanently, when you finally do. You are 35 years old. You sit down at your kitchen table on a Tuesday morning and you type in your login information one last time. The balance reads 0. You have just made your final student loan payment, and you feel almost nothing at first. Then something shifts. Something you have been carrying for over a decade has simply stopped weighing on you, and you did not even notice it was gone until it was. Researchers call it financial relief. The people who live it call it something simpler. They call it breathing. Let us start here with debt. Because for most people, debt is the first mountain, and it is taller than it looks from the base. Approximately 43 million Americans carry federal student loan debt right now. 43 million. That is more people than live in California. The average borrower owes around $37,000. And here is the part that the standard repayment brochure does not emphasize. The typical loan takes not 10 years to pay off, but 20. 2 full decades of your adult life, linked to a decision you made at 18. That gap between the plan and the reality, 10 years versus 20, is not a personal failure. It is a structural truth that almost nobody talks about honestly. What does it actually take to pay off that debt ahead of schedule? It takes a decision, usually made in a moment of quiet clarity, to treat the loan like a fire you are actively putting out rather than a rent you are passively paying. It takes extra payments when you have the money and discipline when you do not. It takes saying no to things that feel reasonable, the vacation, the nicer car, because you have made a commitment to a future version of yourself who does not owe anyone anything. And it takes more time than you expect. When that zero balance finally appears, something strange happens in the brain. Neuroscientists studying financial behavior have found that paying off debt triggers a reward response, literally the same circuitry that lights up when you accomplish a physical goal. Your body registers it as a finish line crossed. That is not metaphor. That is biology. Now let us talk about the next mountain. The median age of a first-time homebuyer in the United States hit a record high of 35 years old in 2023. That number tells a whole story in 4 words. A generation of people spent their 20s managing debt and rising rent and stagnant wages, and arrived at homeownership almost a decade later than their parents did. You are probably not behind. You are on time for the world that actually exists. The median home price hit $431,000 in mid-2023. The typical first-time buyer puts down 8%. That is just under $35,000 you need to have saved in cash before you can even walk through the door, while also paying rent, while also maybe still carrying loans. The down payment problem is real. It is not a mindset issue. It is arithmetic. And the arithmetic is harder than it has ever been. Not everyone starts from the same place. The white homeownership rate in America is about 73%. The black homeownership rate is around 44%. That gap, nearly 30 percentage points, is wider today than it was in 1968, the year the Fair Housing Act was signed into law. Progress in this particular corner of American finance has moved backwards. Naming that fact is not a detour. It is the point. Any honest map of financial milestones has to account for the terrain. When someone finally closes on a home, When they hold those keys, they are not just buying square footage, they are buying stability, the ability to paint the walls, to not wonder if the landlord will renew, to have something that appreciates while you sleep. Real estate, over long periods, tends to grow in value. Not every year, not in every market, but over decades, a home often becomes one of the most significant financial assets a person owns. That is why home ownership feels different from renting, because it is different. Now, we need to talk about a number that sounds almost arbitrary until you understand what it actually means. $100,000 saved. The first 100,000. People in personal finance circles talk about this number like it is a threshold, a crossing point, a before and after, and the math actually supports the mythology. At a 7% average annual return, roughly the long-term historical return of a diversified stock portfolio, $100,000 doubles on its own in approximately 10 years, without you adding a single dollar more. Compounding means your money earns returns, and then those returns earn returns. It is interest on interest. The first 100,000 is hard because you are doing all the work. After that, the money starts pulling its own weight, and that is why this milestone feels different from any savings goal before it. At a 20% savings rate on a median household income, reaching that first 100,000 takes roughly 6 to 7 years from zero. 6 years. That is a long time to feel like nothing is happening. That is the quiet years. Most people quit in the quiet years, not because they are weak, because there is no feedback, no confirmation that the path is working. The account grows slowly, then, eventually, it grows faster. You just have to survive the slow part. The typical American household has less than $65,000 saved for retirement. That number lives inside a much larger story about wages, costs, and the way the economy has shifted risk from employers onto individuals. A generation ago, pensions were common. Your employer saved for you. Now you save for yourself inside accounts with acronyms, 401k, IRA, that most people understand only partially. The burden shifted, but the financial education did not follow. Fidelity recommends having 1 times your annual salary saved by age 30 and 10 times your salary saved by age 67. Most people are not on that track. Most people are not even close. And that gap is one of the most quietly demoralizing feelings in modern financial life. It is worth saying, benchmarks are maps, not verdicts. They tell you where you are relative to a suggested path. They do not tell you that you have failed, but they do point toward a real question. And the real question is this: what does it mean to be financially free? Not rich. Free. There is a movement built around that question. It is called FIRE. Financial Independence, Retire Early. The math is simpler than it sounds. You need to save 25 times your annual expenses. The logic is this: if you withdraw 4% of your savings per year, a portfolio of that size has historically been able to sustain those withdrawals indefinitely. That 4% figure comes from decades of research into market returns and inflation. To get there, people in the FIRE movement typically aim to save between 50 and 75% of their income. The average American saves about 4.6%. The gap between those two numbers is not just a strategy gap. It is an entirely different relationship with money and time. Most people cannot save 50% of their income. That is not a character flaw. It is arithmetic again. Rent, childcare, healthcare, food. The cost of a basic life has grown faster than wages for most American workers. But even if you cannot hit 50%, the insight at the center of FIRE is still useful. Every dollar you save is a tiny piece of your time being bought back. Every month you extend your runway is a month you will not have to trade your hours for a paycheck. The goal does not have to be radical. The principle is still true. And that principle, that saving is not deprivation but liberation, changes how every financial milestone feels once you understand it. Here's what people who reach financial independence almost always say. And this is the part that surprises people who have not gotten there yet. They do not describe arriving at the number and feeling euphoric. They describe something quieter, a morning when they realized they could say no to something they did not want to do and mean it. A Tuesday when they did not feel the low-grade fear that has lived in their chest since their 20s. A sense, more than anything, of spaciousness. And when you think about it, truly think about it, that is what every financial milestone is really pointing toward. Not the number itself, the freedom the number represents. Each milestone expands what is possible. Each one narrows the gap between the life you are living and the life you intended. Paying off debt is not about the zeroed out balance. It is about not sending part of every paycheck backward in time. Buying a home is not about square footage. It is about somewhere that is yours. Saving the first 100,000 is about crossing the threshold where your money begins to do real work. Financial independence is about owning your time. A Tuesday morning, a kitchen table, a loan balance that just hit zero. You sit there for a moment longer than you need to. You do not celebrate loudly. You close the laptop, you stand up, and something in the way you move through the rest of that day is different, lighter, quieter, more like the person you always knew you could be once the weight was gone. That moment is real. It is waiting for you. And the distance between here and there is not as unknowable as it feels at midnight. It is made of time and choices and the stubborn refusal to stop walking toward it.